Blood sugar doesn't rise because the body is failing. It rises because the body is responding honestly to what we give it. And when we begin to understand that response, something shifts. We stop fighting our biology, and we start working with it. This is where fruit is often misunderstood. Sweetness itself is not the enemy. Speed is. How fast sugar enters the bloodstream determines whether the body stays calm or goes into stress. Take berries, for example. Small, simple, often overlooked. Yet inside them is a rare balance: fiber, antioxidants, and naturally slow-digesting sugars. When you eat berries, glucose enters the blood like a quiet conversation, not a loud interruption. Insulin responds gently. Cells remain protected. Inflammation stays low. Nature didn't remove sweetness here, it slowed it down. Then there's the apple. So familiar that we forget how intelligently it's built. That crisp bite hides soluble fiber that turns almost gel-like during digestion. This slows the movement of sugar into the bloodstream, giving the pancreas time to respond without urgency. And this teaches us something important. Energy is preserved not by sudden pleasure, but by steady nourishment. Avocado enters almost like a contradiction. It doesn't taste sweet, yet it may be one of the most powerful fruits for blood sugar balance. Very low in sugar, rich in healthy fats, it improves insulin sensitivity. Cells become more willing to accept glucose. Less insulin is needed. And here, the body shows us a deeper truth. Balance is not created by taking things away, but by supporting what already exists. The pear follows with a softness that feels gentle, but works deeply. High in fiber, easy on digestion, releasing sugar slowly over time. It feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and when the gut is supported, blood sugar often follows. Because metabolism doesn't live in isolation. It's connected to the gut, the nervous system, even emotional stress. Blood sugar control is never just about food, it's about internal harmony. And finally, citrus, especially grapefruit. Sharp. Awakening. Its natural compounds improve insulin response and reduce post-meal spikes. Its acidity slows digestion just enough to prevent sudden glucose surges. Once again, the lesson is clear. The body doesn't reject fruit. It reacts to speed. When we choose fruits that respect the body's rhythm, the body responds with stability, clarity, and resilience. When we talk about blood sugar, we often speak as if the body is fragile, as if one wrong bite causes failure, but the truth is far more respectful than that, because the body is adaptive, observant, and deeply responsive, and berries reveal this intelligence better than almost any fruit, not because they are sweet or unsweet, but because they move through the body slowly, deliberately, almost thoughtfully, and this pace is everything, because glucose does not harm us by existing, it harms us. By arriving too fast, overwhelming systems that were designed for rhythm rather than shock, and berries arrive with restraint, wrapped in fiber that slows digestion, antioxidants that reduce oxidative stress, and natural compounds that support insulin signaling, allowing sugar to enter the bloodstream in a controlled, predictable way that keeps cells calm and energy stable. Inside berries, the sugars abound within cellular structures that require time to break down, and this mechanical slowing begins in the mouth, continues through the stomach, and shapes the response of the pancreas, which releases insulin not in panic but in proportion, preserving sensitivity rather than exhausting it. And this is important, because insulin resistance is not created overnight. It develops when the body is repeatedly forced to react quickly, and berries reduce this burden by giving the system time, which is one of the most underrated forms of healing in human biology. There is also the quiet work of polyphenols, natural compounds abundant in berries that interact with enzymes involved in carbohydrate digestion, gently reducing how quickly sugars are absorbed, while simultaneously protecting blood vessels from inflammation. And this matters because blood sugar is not just about numbers on a chart, it is about how glucose interacts with the lining of arteries, the nerves, the eyes, and the kidneys. And berries support these systems not aggressively, but consistently, reinforcing the idea that health is often maintained through small, repeated acts of biological kindness rather than dramatic interventions. Berries also teach us something about volume and satisfaction, because they offer sweetness with low energy density, meaning you can eat a generous portion without overwhelming the bloodstream. And this satisfies both physiology and psychology, reducing cravings for refined sugar that spikes glucose far more violently. And in this way, berries help restore trust between hunger and nourishment, reminding the body that sweetness does not always signal danger, especially when it arrives with fiber, water, and protective micronutrients. What makes berries especially valuable is not that they lower blood sugar aggressively, but that they prevent unnecessary spikes in the first place, and prevention is quieter than correction, less visible but far more powerful over time, because each calm response preserves metabolic flexibility, protects insulin sensitivity, and reduces chronic inflammation, allowing the body to remain adaptable rather than rigid, resilient rather than reactive. And this is perhaps the deepest lesson berries offer, that the goal is not control through force, but stability through alignment with how the human body was designed to receive energy. The apple stands as a reminder that familiarity often hides complexity, because what appears ordinary can carry extraordinary biological intelligence. And when we look closely at how an apple interacts with the human body, we begin to see that blood sugar balance is not achieved by eliminating sweetness, but by shaping its journey, and the apple shapes the journey through structure, fiber, and timing, all working together in a quiet, coordinated way that respects the body's natural rhythms, rather than challenging them. When an apple is eaten whole, its soluble fiber begins absorbing water in the digestive tract, forming a soft, gel-like substance that slows gastric emptying and delays the breakdown of carbohydrates. And this delay matters more than most people realize, because it determines how quickly glucose appears in the bloodstream. And when glucose rises slowly, insulin can respond efficiently without being pushed into excess, protecting the cells from repeated exposure to high insulin levels that gradually reduce sensitivity over time, which is how long-term imbalance begins. This slowing effect also extends to the small intestine, where the fiber reduces the rate at which sugar crosses into the blood, giving the liver and muscles time to absorb glucose for immediate use or storage without overwhelming the system. And in this way, the apple acts less like a source of sugar and more like a regulator of energy flow, guiding glucose toward purpose rather than allowing it to drift unchecked through the bloodstream, where it can contribute to inflammation and cellular stress. Apples also contain natural plant compounds that interact with digestive enzymes and glucose transporters, subtly reducing how quickly carbohydrates are processed, and this interaction highlights an important principle of nutrition, that food is not just fuel, but information, sending biochemical signals that influence metabolism, appetite, and hormonal response. And when these signals are gentle and well-matched to human physiology, the body responds with stability rather than resistance. There is also the act of chewing, often overlooked but biologically significant, because eating an apple requires time, mechanical breakdown, and sensory engagement, all of which activate satiety signals in the brain before excess sugar can enter the bloodstream, reducing the likelihood of overeating and supporting better glucose control not through restriction, but through awareness. And this reinforces the idea that how we eat can be just as important as what we eat. Beyond blood sugar, apples. Avocado challenges the way we think about fruit, because it does not behave like one in the metabolic sense, and this contrast reveals something essential about blood sugar balance, that glucose control is not only about sugar content, but about how the body is supported at the cellular level, and avocado supports the body not by stimulating insulin, but by improving the conditions under which insulin works, which is a far more sustainable form of balance. Unlike most fruits, avocado contains almost no natural sugar, but it is rich in monounsaturated fats that slow digestion and stabilize energy release. And when fat is present in a meal, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually, reducing spikes and preventing the rapid insulin surges that strain the pancreas over time. And this gradual absorption allows cells to take in glucose at a pace that matches their needs, preserving metabolic flexibility rather than forcing emergency responses. What makes avocado especially powerful is its effect on insulin sensitivity, because healthy fats help improve the function of cell membranes, making them more responsive to insulin signal. And when cells respond efficiently, the body needs less insulin to manage the same amount of glucose, reducing chronic insulin exposure that contributes to resistance, inflammation, and fat storage. And this process is subtle, but over time, it reshapes how the body handles energy at its most fundamental level. Avocado also provides fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and this gut support has a direct influence on blood sugar regulation, because the microbiome produces compounds that affect insulin signaling, inflammation, and even hunger hormones. And when the gut environment is stable, blood sugar fluctuations often soften, not because of one nutrient acting alone, but because multiple systems begin communicating more clearly with each other. There is also a neurological component, because fat slows the rise and fall of blood sugar, preventing the rapid drops that trigger hunger, cravings, and stress responses. And when blood sugar remains steady, the nervous system stays calmer, cortisol levels remain lower, and the body avoids the cycle of stress-driven glucose release that worsens insulin resistance, creating a feedback loop of stability rather than disruption. Avocado teaches us that balance does not always come from sweetness, and that sometimes the most powerful tool for blood sugar control is nourishment that feels neutral, grounding, and sustaining, providing the body with structural support rather than stimulation, and in doing so, it reframes health not as a battle against sugar, but as a process of strengthening the systems that manage it naturally. The pear carries a quiet gentleness that mirrors the way it moves through the body, and this gentleness is precisely what makes it valuable for blood sugar balance, because not every effective food works by intensity or restriction. Some work by cooperation, and the pear cooperates with digestion, metabolism, and the gut in a way that reduces stress on the entire system while still providing nourishment and satisfaction. When a pear is eaten whole, its high fiber content immediately begins shaping the digestive process, slowing the breakdown of its natural sugars and reducing the speed at which glucose enters the bloodstream. And this slow release allows insulin to be used efficiently rather than excessively, protecting the body from repeated hormonal spikes that gradually reduce sensitivity and increase inflammation, and over time, these small reductions in stress accumulate into meaningful metabolic stability. The type of fiber found in pears is especially supportive of the gut microbiome, feeding beneficial bacteria that play a direct role in blood sugar regulation, because these microbes produce short-chain fatty acids that improve insulin sensitivity and reduce low-grade inflammation. And when inflammation is lowered, glucose uptake improves, not through force, but through restoration of normal cellular communication, reinforcing the idea that blood sugar balance is deeply connected to digestive health. Pears are also rich in water, and hydration influences glucose concentration in the blood more than most people realize, because even mild dehydration can increase blood sugar readings by concentrating glucose in the bloodstream, and the water content of pears supports hydration while delivering nutrients slowly, reducing the physiological strain that comes from both dehydration and rapid sugar absorption. And this dual effect contributes to steadier energy levels and reduced cravings. There is also a textural aspect to pears that encourages slower eating, requiring chewing and attention, which activates satiety signals in the brain before excess sugar is absorbed, helping regulate portion size naturally without conscious restriction. And this is significant, because overeating often occurs not due to hunger, but due to speed. And foods that slow consumption support metabolic health simply by allowing the brain time to register fullness. On a deeper level, pears remind us that softness does not mean weakness, and that gentle foods can produce powerful long-term effects when they work in alignment with human physiology, reducing stress rather than provoking defense mechanisms, supporting balance rather than forcing control. And this philosophy extends beyond nutrition, suggesting that sustainable health is built through consistency, patience, and respect for the body's natural pace rather than aggressive interventions or extreme measures. Citrus fruits, and grapefruit in particular, bring a sharp clarity to the conversation about blood sugar, not because they are aggressive in their effects, but because they influence multiple metabolic pathways at once, revealing how timing, digestion, and hormonal response work together to determine whether glucose remains stable or becomes disruptive. And this sharpness is not a shock to the body, but a signal that gently reshapes how energy is processed. Grapefruit contains natural compounds that improve the body's response to insulin, making cells more receptive to glucose without increasing insulin output. And this improved sensitivity allows sugar to move out of the bloodstream more efficiently after meals, reducing post-meal spikes that place repeated stress on blood vessels and nerves. And over time, this efficiency preserves metabolic flexibility, allowing the body to adapt rather than compensate through excess hormone production. The acidity of grapefruit also plays a critical role in digestion, because acidic foods slow gastric emptying, meaning food remains in the stomach longer and enters the small intestine more gradually. And this delay reduces the speed of carbohydrate absorption, flattening the glucose curve rather than allowing sharp peaks and crashes. And this slower entry gives the pancreas time to respond proportionally, avoiding the hormonal overcorrection that contributes to instability. Citrus fruits are also rich in soluble fiber, which further slows sugar absorption and supports gut health, reinforcing the idea that blood sugar control is never the result of a single mechanism, but of overlapping systems working together. And when fiber, acidity, and bioactive compounds align, the metabolic response becomes smoother, calmer, and more predictable. There is also an effect on appetite regulation, because the bitter compounds in grapefruit influence hormones that signal fullness, reducing the likelihood of overeating and supporting portion control without conscious restriction. And when intake is naturally moderated, blood sugar stability follows, not through discipline, but through biochemical feedback loops that guide behavior subtly and effectively. Beyond physiology, citrus fruits highlight an important truth about balance, that contrast can be stabilizing, and that sharp, awakening flavors can slow us down rather than push us forward, encouraging mindful eating and sensory awareness. And when we eat with attention, digestion improves, hormonal responses soften, and the body moves out of reactive patterns into steadier states of regulation, reinforcing the understanding that blood sugar stability emerges not from avoiding certain foods, entirely, but from choosing foods that respect the tempo at which the human body was designed to receive and use energy.